Johnathan Kovacevic, Tomas Tatar, and John Marino. What did all those players have to say during their recent media availabilities? We have a lot to break down in today's episode of Locked On Devils. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Scores! Oh, Stevens stepped up, nailed him. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here on Locked On Network. I'm your host, college hockey play announcer, Devils Rider of Pucks Pitchforks, and also part-time credential media member, Trey Matthews. First and foremost, thank you to everyone who wished me a happy birthday. I really appreciate it. I recently turned 25. I'm a quarter of the way to 100, but I'm also 5 years away from 30, which is hard to believe. But I can think of it from this perspective. Who knows what the next 25 years has in store? Had a great celebration. And I've been away for a few days just to clear my head because, like I told you guys, I have been recording episode after episode after episode, which included a trip to Las Vegas. At one point, I recorded 9 episodes in the last 10 days. Just had to hit the reset button. But like I've been saying religiously on this show, the past week or so, the grind does not stop. And what are we going to be talking about in today's episode? Well, we're going to react to some media availabilities. In today's episode, I will talk more about Johnathan Kovacevic because I think he was one of the more underrated gets for Tom Fitzgerald. Then in the second segment, we're going to talk about Tomas Tatar and his return to New Jersey. And I still hold my head high like a proud peacock because people have been saying that I was like a dumbass for saying like Tomas Tatar and Stefan Noesen would come back to New Jersey or that the Devils would be interested in them. And lo and behold, here they are reunited with the Devils. Tatar had his media availability, and we're going to talk about what his role might be with the team moving forward in his second stint. Then in the third and final segment, we're actually going to hear from now former Devil John Marino as he is set to play for the Utah Hockey Club because Marino talked about what it takes to have a winning culture within a team. And I want to touch on that a little bit because some people are wondering, are the Devils building a winning culture? Because somebody was saying, like, what does John Marino know about building a winning culture? Well, he was a part of the Pittsburgh Penguins prior to joining the Devils, and he was teammates with Sidney Crosby, one of the greatest hockey players to ever play this game. Some of his other notable teammates are Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang, Jake Gensel. I could go on, but we'll talk more about that in the third and final segment. All right, let's talk about Johnathan Kovacevic. Why do I want to talk about him? Well, the Devils recently released a graphic talking about some of the assets that they obtained the last week or so. And some people were clowning on Johnathan Kovacevic being included in that said graphic. And I just want to talk more about Kovacevic's game and also play some sound bites from his respective media availability because, like I said, I think Kovacevic was an underrated get for Tom Fitzgerald. Now, before I talk about his game, here's what he had to say when asked about it during his press conference. Take a listen.
I think I play, a hard defensive game. I take care of my own zone first, so a responsible game, but also make good breakout passes, get the puck moving north. I'm a big body, use my reach to defend well, use my body to defend. I want to play a hard, reliable game and be someone that the team can depend on back there.
All right, let's recap his 2023-2024 season with the Montreal Canadiens. And honestly, these numbers might surprise you. He had a point share rating of 3.3, which ranked 8th on the team. He had a defensive point share rating of 2.7. That actually ranked first on the Canadiens roster. He had a plus-minus rating of plus 11, first on the team. Blocks, 83, fifth on the team. I've been talking about it on this show during the offseason that I think the Devils sort of struggled in the blocks category. Hits, 75, eighth on the team. And let's go back just a little bit further, shall we? 2022-2023. In 77 game appearances, he had 86 blocks, 93 hits, and 36 takeaways. I touched on it in a prior episode, but Jersey Joe, aka Joseph Stanislaw of Draft Pro Hockey, was texting me and he said, like, expect some big blocks, big hits from Kovacevic, and basically he's replacing Kevin Ball and he adds more depth to the roster. And also, Kovacevic was pretty solid on the Canadiens' penalty kill. So he can contribute on special teams for New Jersey. I know Kovacevic probably isn't a big name player. I know he's a player that not many people are familiar with, but just looking back at his stats with the Canadiens just this past season, the fact that he is a depth asset for this Devils roster and he might not play in all the games, it goes to show you how much better the blue line has gotten for New Jersey within the past few weeks. Because throughout the course of the season, one of the main issues for Devils was the injury bug, but also who replaces that said injured player. When Dougie Hamilton went down, when Jonas Siegenthaler went down, the Devils were basically scrambling to find their replacements. They had to rely on a lot of young assets, including Shimo Nemec. And Fitzy revealed at his press conference that Nemec was only supposed to suit up in about 10 games for the Devils, and injuries completely changed the course of action. And they also had to rely on Luke Hughes, Santeri Hatakka, just names like that in order to bolster the blue line. And I think that was one of the biggest Achilles heels for New Jersey. I think Kovacevic has put up some very respectable numbers this past season with the Canadiens, and I think he is going to definitely add some more depth for the Devils. And the fact that, like I said, he's not going to play in every single game, it just goes to show you how much better the blue line has gotten. Now, I had the chance to ask him how much potential does this team have now that he's added to the roster. Here's what he had to tell me. You talked about your game personally, but collectively, how much potential does this unit have now that you're added to the roster? And did you notice anything from afar in the battles you've had against this Devils team?
Yeah, I know that the way these Devils play, it was a hard game to play against for us. They bring a lot of speed. They bring a lot of skill. And now I'm part of that. I'm grateful to be a part of that. And I see the additions they've made on the blue line in the last couple of days, and I'm really excited about that. I think, we've added a lot of defensemen that are hard to play against, that are good defenders. And I'm really looking forward to being a part of that. Being a decor is something that you take a lot of pride in with you and the other defensemen. And I'm looking forward to, the challenge of shutting down, some of the other top teams around the league.
Awesome. That's it for me. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Trey.
He's absolutely right. This team has a lot of potential. And this team from afar was dangerous. Unfortunately, they could never stay healthy. And I guess to close out this segment, I just want to say, don't sleep on Kovacevic. I think if he's given an opportunity to suit up in a decent amount of games for the Devils, he's going to make the most out of it. Like I said, he can participate on the penalty kill, racks up the blocks. He led the Canadiens in defensive point share. He led the Canadiens in plus minus. Who does that sort of remind me of? Oh, right. It reminds me of Ryan Graves. Now, let me just make something perfectly clear. Put down your phones before you call me out on social media. Just listen. I am not saying that Kovacevic is on the same level as Ryan Graves, but he's showing some similar traits, which is he knows how to play efficiently. And Ryan Graves was always tops in the NHL in defensive point share and plus minus. And that was one of the biggest issues that the Devils had this past season when they lost Ryan Graves in free agency to the Pittsburgh Penguins, which is they didn't have too many efficient defensemen that can focus more on the defensive side of things and not really the offense. And I think Kovacevic can kind of fill that gap a little bit. But obviously, Kovacevic's main role is to replace Kevin Ball and just add more depth because, as we all know, Ball was utilized in the Jacob Markstrom trade. Basically, I just wanted to give you guys that small background information on Kovacevic. I didn't really do it all that much when I first talked about him because I had to break down 3 other players that were also added to the Devils roster. But I wanted to put a spotlight on Kovacevic because, like I said, put up solid numbers with the Canadiens. He's an efficient player. He can play on special teams, and he can rack up the hits, the blocks, and the takeaways. Don't underestimate Kovacevic and what he could potentially bring to the Devils roster. And if he's able to repeat that same success that he saw with the Canadiens, then I think Fitzy found another gem. All right, we're going to talk about Tomas Tatar momentarily, but before we continue, let me tell you guys about FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app and dream up any bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Visit FanDuel.com to look at the odds, and please remember to always gamble responsibly. Okay, let's talk about Tomas Tatar and him returning to the Devils. Let's break it down in even more detail. Like I said in a prior episode, I think the main focus for Tatar is to replace the goal production of Alexander Holtz, because Holtz was dealt away in the Paul Cotter trade. And the Devils just need more scoring from other people, not named Jack Hughes, Jesper Bratt, Nico Hischier, Timo Meier. Just get more depth up and down your lineup combinations. And Tatar comes at a cheap price. He's familiar with the organization, and he was really good when he was on the same line as Dawson Mercer and Nico Hischier. But the one factor that we have to include is that this is going to be a new coach for Tatar because, as we all know, he saw that success when Lindy Ruff was at the helm. Now it's Sheldon Keefe. And during his media availability, Tatar talked about the potential new system for the Devils. Here's what he had to share.
Does it feel like you're coming back to the same team with just some new personnel and a new head coach, or does it feel like it's going to be a new experience?
A little bit of both, obviously. You know, coming back and having a lot of the same teammates feels great. And then on the other hand, you know, we have a new coach. There might be a new system. We'll have to learn some stuff. But, you know, I think everybody's, you know, eager to learn and play hockey. So, I mean, it's going to be challenging. But, you know, with the talent, with the hard work, what I know the guys, you know, it should be smooth. So, like I said, I'm really looking forward to camp to start and then see where everyone is, and like I said, to do everything we can to start right off.
I think for Tatar, this go around in his second stint with the Devils, his role is going to change a little bit. Fitzy did say during his press conference that he's going to leave the lineup up to Sheldon Keefe. So whether or not we see Tatar on the same line as Hischier and Mercer, that is up to Sheldon Keefe, and we'll see how that pans out. But Tatar doesn't need to be the same player that he was a couple seasons ago. He, like I said, he just needs to replace the goal production of Alexander Holtz while being efficient, because Holtz was pretty good offensively, but when it came to defense, puck handling, some of those other tangibles, he sort of struggled. And it sometimes made it easy for Lindy Ruff to bench him, even though people, including myself, said that give him just a little bit of a longer leash and maybe he will improve. And at some point, he will redeem himself. But that's what Tatar needs to focus on, which is you are replacing the scoring productivity of Alexander Holtz. And it's going to be interesting to see how Tatar fits into this new system because it is a different team. It's not the same team that the Devils had a couple seasons ago, but I have no doubt in the back of my mind that Tatar is going to play somewhat of a decent role. And I think another big thing that we need to factor in is that Tatar, he has been in the league for a good while. And one of the issues that the Devils had last season was that, unfortunately, they were still one of the youngest teams in the NHL, and people were using it as an excuse. And I just said, no, they made the playoffs during the 2022-2023 season. Expectations are much higher. I get they're young. I get they're still developing. I get that some players are still trying to find their niche in the NHL, but this team is a playoff caliber roster. I asked Brendan Dillon about veteran leadership. Bill Spalding asked Stefan Nason about veteran leadership. And Spalding also asked Tatar about veteran leadership and how vital it is for this Devils roster. Take a listen.
You know, a couple of years ago, you were one of a very limited number of vets and guys who'd been around for 10 plus years in the league on this team. Obviously, the group of guys that Fitzy went out and signed this year involve a lot of veterans, a lot of guys with experience. How do you think adding that mix of veteran leadership and guys who add some good stuff off the ice as well can help this team?
Well, you know, coming back to first time when I signed with the Devils, you know, it was a young team, but even these players, you know, they got a lot of experience now. You know, we went to the playoff, you know, we played some playoff hockey. Those guys become superstars in the league. And, you know, even the younger group all of a sudden have a lot of experience. But the additions, what we add through the off season are all the guys who had experience with playoff hockey. And that's a full package, you know, all of a sudden means there's a lot of experience. You know, we have Andre, you know, who won a few cups, and it's just a good mix, you know, with the veterans and maybe younger players who now have the experience. So, I mean, the expectations are high, and, you know, we have to show it. And like I said, I believe everyone is very excited for a season to start.
I'll tell you guys a fun fact. During the 2022-2023 season, Tatar was actually one of my favorite people to interview because he always went into great detail. He was very insightful. Was he the best player? No, but he was certainly underrated, if you ask me. I think Tatar not only is going to have somewhat of a role on the sheet of ice, but he's also going to have a big role in the locker room because similar to what Nason said during his respective media availability, it's important to establish a team identity. It's important to establish a strong team culture if you want to see success. And Tatar is going to play a role in that. And I'm glad that Fitzy, aside from adding needs for Devils, he was also trying to look for players that have experience and can teach a thing or two to some of the young guys in the Devils locker room. It's kind of weird to think this, but he sure is entering year 8 of being in the NHL. Jack Hughes, he's been in the league for a few years. Same with Jesper Bratt. Similar to what Mike Moriel said on this show when he appeared before the draft, we're getting to a point where these young guys, yes, they are relatively young in age. They're starting to gain even more experience in the NHL. And like I said moments ago, the Devils being relatively young, that can't really be an excuse moving forward. But I'm glad that Tatar was added to the mix to help out. And when asked about the cohesiveness between him, Mercer, and Hischier, here's what he had to say. I wanted to ask it, but Bill beat me to it. Take a listen.
Oh, we're really close, you know, on and off the ice. You know, like I said, I've been in touch with a lot of the guys, even when we weren't teammates. But it was just very easy, you know. Me, Nico, and Merce were talking a lot, you know, off the ice. You know, how we can help each other more. What can we do better to become, you know, the best line, or how we can, you know, help the team the most. And it's just, you know, everybody, if someone had to say something, you know, or you know, bring something positive and helpful, you know, we're all listening. So it was just, you know, very easy to play with these two. And, you know, I'm just speaking for myself. I really enjoyed the line. I mean, obviously, like I said, it's a new season. It's going to be a new camp, and nothing is handed. And you have to earn everything. So don't really know how the lines will be structured, but like I said, I really enjoyed my time with these two, and we might be playing together again. We'll see. We'll have to see.
Like I said, will Tatar play a decent sized role on the Devils roster? Will he have that same success that he had with Heischer just a couple seasons ago, in which they had an expected goals percentage of 64.2%? Only time will tell. But I think Tatar is still a solid addition for this Devils roster. And I think the less you ask out of him, the better he'll do. And keep in mind, he did lead the Canadiens in scoring a few years ago. He's been to the Stanley Cup final, albeit he didn't really play that big of a role on the Canadiens roster at that point, but he still made it, and he knows what it takes to get there. And I think him, Stefan Nason, Brett Pesce, Brendan Dillon, guys who have been in the league for a while, they can definitely teach these young guys a thing or two. But like I said, those young guys, those young guns for Devils, they're starting to gain more NHL experience. But I think they're starting to form something special in New Jersey. Okay, courtesy of my buddy Chase Beardsley over at the Hockey Writers, he's actually appeared on this show before. He asked John Marino, who had his media availability for the Utah Hockey Club, about having a winning culture in New Jersey. Here's what he had to say.
I mean, I think it starts with, obviously the older guys kind of instilling that in the younger guys and, kind of teaching them the ropes and what makes, a successful team culture, how it's just being an everyday pro, going about your business every day. I mean, it's such a long season that, can be grueling on, some of the younger guys, coming from shortened seasons or, especially how competitive the league is now. It's kind of all those little things that add up to, having a winning culture.
Now, somebody asked me on Twitter, and I'm not trying to call anyone out, so I will leave this person anonymous. They pointed out and said he didn't have a winning culture while here in Jersey. The Devils made the playoffs one time while he was here and did not see the Eastern Conference Finals. So what are we even talking about? And the reason I'm addressing this is not to call that person out, but it's a legitimate question, which is, are the Devils building a winning culture? And I would say that I think it varies person to person. I think everyone has a different perspective on it. But from my opinion, I definitely do think that the Devils are trying to build a winning culture. Are they going to be title contenders? Are they going to be a dynasty 5 years from now? We don't know that yet. But I think based on what Fitzy has been trying to do the last few years, it's clear that the Devils do want to win. And it started off with getting Dougie Hamilton during the summer of 2021. The Devils were still projected to perform bad, but getting Dougie Hamilton shifted things for New Jersey. Then come the offseason in 2022, the Devils were trying to go big game hunting for players like Alex DeBrincat, Kevin Fiala, Matthew Tkachuk, Johnny Gaudreau. Unfortunately, it didn't work out, but they did add Andre Palat, a guy who has had Stanley Cup pedigree, 2 cups with the Lightning. Or Eric Halla, someone who has only played on playoff caliber rosters, or Brendan Smith, a guy who's been in the league for a while. Not the best player, but he's been in the league for a while. And then the Devils had a historic season going on a 13-game winning streak and then getting Timo Meier at the deadline. They get out of the first round against New York Rangers. Rangers blew a 2-0 lead. I think the Devils definitely are building a winning culture. And this past season, yes, it was a disappointing one, but I think it was a bit of a fluke just because the Devils were very injury prone. And the fact that they didn't get mathematically eliminated from playoff contention until early April, I think that says a thing or two about the team. So yes, I do think the Devils are building a winning culture. And look what Fitzy did during the course of the offseason. Yes, I'm sure a lot of people wanted Brady Tkachuk, Jonathan Marchessault, Steven Stamkos, you name it. But Fitzy focused on what do the Devils need. They need more depth in terms of forwards, defensemen, and a better goaltending tandem. And that's exactly what he did. And he adds Sheldon Keefe to the mix. Sheldon Keefe, throughout his time as a head coach, whether it's been with the Maple Leafs or the Marlies, he does have a history of going to the playoffs. He has a history of getting the best of his top performers. I think Keefe was definitely a good hire for New Jersey. Yes, the Devils are definitely building a winning culture, and they can only go up from here, in my opinion. Like I said, I don't want to jump the gun on anything. Will they become Stanley Cup contenders? Will they be a threat out east? Will they be a threat in the Metro? Well, I think they're going to be a threat in the Metro, but in terms of being title contenders, only time will tell. We'll see what happens. But I think John Marino is absolutely right, and the Devils definitely addressed some of those issues during the offseason, which is getting more veterans to help guide the young players. And John Marino did play a decent part in terms of defense for the Devils' historic season. Don't forget that. People were writing off John Marino, and he had a good showing in terms of defense. The only reason why the Devils got rid of him was because they needed to make some room financially in order to get Brett Pesce, Brendan Dillon, and a few others. I think if the Devils only had to go after maybe a few other assets that were a little cheap, like if they were just going after Tomas Tatar, Stefan Nason, or Paul Cotter, I think the Devils would have kept John Marino, but Fitzy knew he needed to just upgrade it just a tad bit more, and he did so in Pesce and Dillon. But let me know what you guys think. Do you think this Devils team is building a winning culture? What do you think of Kovacevic? And are you happy that Tatar was added back to the roster? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. If you're listening on podcast streaming service, hit me up on my personal X Page app at TreyMatt4 or the show's X Page app at Locked On Devils. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment down below. As for today's episode, that's all the time I have for you. Continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day, New Jersey. Go Devils. I'll catch you guys next episode. Thanks for listening once again.